Hey, Apt is your number one destination for the home, and with LG's summertime Buy More, Save More promotion, you can save an extra $1,000 when you bundle eligible LG or LG Studio home appliances. And this offer, it's important now, is valid from now through August 20th of 2025. Look, LG is committed to creating products that perform at the highest level, not just for now, but for years to come. Elevate your life with America's most reliable line of appliances. For free at home delivery, professional installation, complete satisfaction, shop at Apt. You know what they've been doing? Have you heard? Oh, they've been pleasing people since 1936. This is Steve Cochran. Welcome to Live from My Office with an old friend and one of your favorite guests from all those years on the radio and a lot of podcast appearances as well. Well, join me today. I'll solve that mystery for you in just a second. I mentioned the podcast today. I mentioned this. We are now 400 plus episodes. This is just the first in many high-tech graphics we'll be using on this episode today. 400 plus episodes. Couldn't happen without you. Thank you for listening. And please subscribe and follow. And find someone who doesn't listen to podcasts and go, you have no idea what you're missing. And then sign them up and make sure they're subscribing and following Live from My Office. Remember, we do a Live from My Office episode that we drop on Thursdays and Fridays. And then an Anything But Politics episode on Mondays and Tuesdays. Now, with this exception. We're off next week. Yes, it's vacation time. I'm going to another one of those beauty spas where I'll be poked and prodded and be even prettier when I come back. But next week, we've got one of your favorites that will be posted. The great Dave Barry joined me, and it's always great with Dave. And he talks about his colonoscopy. And Anything But Politics will return as well. That drops on Mondays or Tuesdays. And Anything But Politics is exactly that. It's a product of Live from My Office, but we don't talk about politics. I have great guests on, my friends, people you love, people I love, who then are given 4 or 5 topics and we knock them around. And the only rule is we don't talk politics. So there you go. That's the lineup. And again, thank you for listening. If you want to catch up on all of the podcasts, there's 400 plus. I don't know if you heard. You can listen and do that by going to cochranshow.com. But wherever you get your podcasts, it's available there. Don't forget about our new YouTube channel. Highly populated already with terrific video. And for those of you watching on YouTube now, thank you. But simply go to YouTube and search Live from My Office, and you'll get our Live from My Office channel, and you can actually watch what we're doing here. Something. All right, so you'll notice I'm often wearing these now. It's my Survive 2025 hat. And behind me, the Survive 2025 shirt. You can order yours at survive2025.us, and you could look super cool for the summer. I think we can agree that's a great looking shirt. And these hats are great too. Maybe order both. Here's the thing. If you order a hat, let's say you just get a Jones to order a hat. I, for a limited time, while supplies last, am going to throw this in. That's an Apt gift card worth $50 from our friends at Apt who sponsor Live from My Office. And thank you, Apt. I'm going to throw one of those in. If you order the shirt, you're going to get one of these. A Live from My Office gift card. If you order both, you're going to get one of these. A Live from My Office gift card. Again, the value, $50. It's like you're getting the merchandise for free. So do that as soon as you can and get your orders in. And this is exciting news, too. 100% tariff-free. That's right. I don't know how long I'll be able to say this, but our merchandise is 100% tariff-free. Order yours, as you can see, at our highly professional graphic, survive2025.us. All right, on to my guest. He is my friend, Pat Brady. Pat Brady was a regular on the Steve Cochran Show on the radio for years. And Pat Brady and I have a lot to talk about. We talk about Mike Madigan finally getting his and going away to jail. We talk about the mess that the Democrat Party is. And we talk about the mess that Donald Trump and the Republicans are. Yes, it's an actual balanced and fair conversation about politics, just like you find everywhere. So I think you're going to enjoy Pat Brady. And also, I think this is relevant and important. And if I can find my phone, I'm going to play something for you here. Senator Durbin, Illinois Senator Durbin, is leaving. He's had enough. And after an incredible career in Washington, he's out. In the meantime, he still has much work to do. And just a few days ago at a hearing in the Senate on Joe Biden's competency, and was there a cover-up? And is there any sort of, criminal intent there? That's the point of the investigation. I thought Durbin did something great because in that event, he played this.
And we're going to make a question of cognitive ability. I think we should consider what happened in Alberta, Canada, just this week, where President Trump was at a press conference with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and said the following: "You all know the great PM of the UK, and we just signed a document." President Trump continued, "We just signed it, so we have our trade agreement with the EU. Britain has not been a party to the EU for 5 years, but President Trump made a statement which clearly was wrong." Now I'd like you to see a short video that includes some other examples of cognitive ability.
It's his audio for you, for your benefit. Search it if you like.
Don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know that windmills are driving the whales crazy, obviously. I have concepts of a plan. They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the... I know about magnets is this. Give me a glass of water. Let me drop it on the magnets. That's the end of the magnet. The kidney has a very special place in the heart. Right, and then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that? Injection inside or almost a cleaning. This is a tough hurricane. One of the wettest.
That's right, one of the wettest
We've ever seen from the standpoint of water. One of the
wettest hurricanes we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. This little greatest hits trip there with the highly cognitively able Donald Trump. The time wasted, the money wasted on Capitol Hill. It's stunning, but that's why you got to be involved. And Pat Brady and I talk about that as well. So let's get after it. I'm glad you're here on YouTube, on the Live from My Office channel, or wherever you're listening to this podcast. It's another edition of Live from My Office with my friend Pat Brady. Enjoy this. Well, it's fun to put the band back together. This is one of my great friends in life, though he will never say the same about me. It's Pat Brady. Hi, Pat.
That's not true.
How are you, dude?
You're one of my friends.
Pat and I are going to catch up on what we always talk about, which is politics. But first, let me catch up with you. Family's great, I hope?
Yeah, thank you. And as always, thank you for your support in our tough times a decade ago. But everybody's great. You know how it is, adult problems.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know if you agree with this. I think it's remarkable, because people with little kids talk about how tired they are, and they talk about how busy things are, and this and that. Raising adult children is dramatically harder than it ever was to raise kids.
Yeah, because, I have 4, right? You have 2. I get, on average, 4 calls a week, different things. I can tell you what the scenarios are, but it's not like they're calling me because they really care what I say. Just, like 3 o'clock this morning, I get a call from my daughter in San Diego, and I go, "Oh, this is never good." I guess there was some guy creeping around her house. So she's losing her mind, so I just, 20 minutes of call the police, but they're good.
Right.
Both of us, and I know I'm just proud that we raise good people. They're engaged.
Oh, yeah. Now, listen, your adult kids, my adult kids are great. But the idea that they truly value our opinion. Now, the good news is at some point you'll have grandkids. Well, I know, and I'm looking forward to it. Grandkids are the greatest invention ever because Abigail, Isaac, and Elise, well, maybe not so much Elise, but Abigail and Isaac, the 9-year-old and the 5-year-old, they still think I'm a genius. I figure I got 3 years left to run with Abigail. Isaac, maybe a little longer, but they're nothing but fun.
You always like Grandpa. I always thought, though, the funniest thing was my late wife thought I was Mr. Wonderful until she had her first kid, and then I was just some guy she met in a bar. It was like, what the hell happened there?
I hope you don't mind mentioning this because it is very personal, but this one of the most true and entertaining things you ever said to me, and going through the nightmare of losing your wife, was something she said to you at the end, and I might get the quote partially wrong, but it was something to the effect of, I don't care what you do, but don't you F up our kids. It was something like that.
That was about 40 hours before she died. It was very heartfelt. Like, well, thank you, honey. I love you too.
Well, you've done an amazing.
She also said to me, I want you to move on and date. And I go, honey, you understand very well. You've been married to me for 20 years. I particularly like hanging out with guys. Golf. She goes, yeah, you're right. You don't do well with women.
Yeah. No, you're doing just fine. Pat Brady's a guest. Pat ran the Republican Party in Illinois when they still knew what they were doing and were actually trying. And you and I got together over a couple of reasons, but the professional reason was I had nothing but respect for you when you stood up and said, I am a conservative. I believe in traditional conservative Republican values, but we got to get out of people's bedrooms. And when you said that out loud and said the Republican Party needed to stop worrying about things like that, Representative Oberweis in particular led a group that couldn't wait to kick you out. I will argue the Republican Party hasn't been anywhere close to right since then, and take that word right in all sense of the word. We'll get to the overall state of the Republican Party, but let's go backwards for a second and start with the Democrats. From the time I went back to WGN in 2014, you and our friend Eric Edelstein were regular guests, you most of the time, and you and I were banging on Michael Madigan, every day. I kept a running count of how many days it was that he wouldn't do an interview. You pulled off one of the great PR stunts of all time with him.
Honest to God, to this day, that might be the funniest thing I've ever done, and a very life full of funny.
I'm going to ask you to explain that because it takes a second to understand why it mattered. But Madigan's going to jail. If he lives that long, he's going to jail pending appeal or whatever. And the sentence was what, 7 years?
7.5. He got 90 months.
Well, as a previous prosecutor and a guy that knows the law, is that the right sentence?
Yeah, Judge Blakey, and if you go to, I watched the sentencing hearing, you lay out a series of aggravating and mitigating factors, aggravating which actually upped the sentence, mitigating which lessened the sentence. And it was a 3.5-hour hearing, and he went through every one of the aggravating factors. But to your question, I was thinking it was about a 4-year case, given the lost figures they were talking and other things that go into calculating the sentencing. But what the judge went off, was that Speaker Madigan testified at the trial, which is his right, and it's his decision. I guarantee his lawyers told him not to. And he got up, and the judge said, you lied. Your testimony was nauseating. So I think he got the extra 3.5, based on the aggravating factor that he committed another crime. He committed obstruction of justice at his trial. And again, he had every right to testify, but man, the judge... I had never seen a judge call a defendant to his face.
Nauseating?
Nauseating. And you lied. Just flat out like it. And there's a whole bunch of things that go into this, but just sitting in that, I was in the overflow courtroom, so it was the TV in front of me, but the drama of watching Mike Madigan go through this whole process, sitting there, it was, even if you weren't even that tuned into politics, it was as good as any theater you're ever going to see.
Now, Mike Madigan, for all the years, in particular the last 20 that he was in power, as Chuck Todd said to you and I on my show back in the day, he's the last of those guys, the last of the state power brokers. He was the single most powerful state politician in the country.
Longest serving.
Yeah, and he
in the country.
And what he would do regularly was he didn't have a phone or a cell phone you could call. He didn't deal in email you could call. He had 2 or 3 guys around him that would protect him and keep him from dealing with constituents. And he ran his district like a mob family ran a neighborhood. He made sure everybody in his district that would vote for him and campaign for him got what they wanted and were taken care of. So he always looked like a great guy. And then, of course, the way Illinois works, you carve up the map. His map in his district was particularly ridiculous. But part of that plan was, and part of his regular mode of operations was, he would run fake candidates against him. You knew that for years. So what did you do?
Well, yeah, he puts up one of his flunkies that he got a job. Usually it was the same guy that worked at Streets and Sanitation. In the one year, I think it was 2012, he ran this guy with an Irish surname because that's a big deal, yeah. Uh-huh. Well, not as much in that district as it was back then, but throws him on the ballot. And it's a district he's going to win by 80 points anyway, but he's got to be assured of victory because that's all he cared about was keeping that seat. Anyway, so he always put up somebody with an Irish surname. So he puts up John Patrick Ryan. And we know it's BS. So we're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. As chairman of the Republican Party, it's my obligation for this guy who is making this effort to run against the most powerful man in the state. We need to support him, and we need to have a fundraiser for him. So we did this fundraiser up at this bar in River North. And honest to God, we had everybody come in, Skip Saviano, Tom Cross, all the leadership, Jim Durkin, give speeches.
Well, and also, didn't you have international press?
Yeah, I'm getting to that. So Durkin and I actually wrote a poem based on, what's that Irish? May the road always rise to meet you.
Yeah. May the road rise to meet you where your troubles be few.
So we raised like $3,000, which triggered the reporting requirements. But turned out every press outlet in the city was there, but it turns out even the BBC was in town that day with their cameras. So this guy from the BBC comes over. I'm not kidding you, Steve. It was so funny. Funny. This big fundraiser, we're with you, John Patrick. Everybody gives a speech, and I get up and I fake and I kind of wipe a tear away. You know, I hate to break it to you, but he's not coming tonight. So two things. I walk away. Paul Meinke was there, and he aired it on Channel 7 with Ron Majors. And Ron Majors, he does his piece, and he's sitting there with Meinke. Ron Majors starts laughing that he didn't show up. And I hear the cameraman start laughing. I got the clip. It's hilarious. Anyway, the guy from the BBC he kind of looks at me, he goes, "You guys are crazy."
Later on, years after, and not that long ago now, Madigan famously said to someone, Pat Brady needs to get a hobby. Because
Mike Flannery.
Yeah.
We did. And it was Jim Durkin, my good friend, when I became party chairman in 2009, he goes, "Your whole job is to just," here was the theory. We came up with this theory, Fire Madigan, or it was actually my creation, but Mike Madigan enjoyed being in the shadows. And our good friend Rick Pearson, when we used to do the show,
Chicago Tribune legend,
all the time. And Pearson had some polling numbers. Pearson's the best political reporter in the country, and he goes, "Hey, Madigan's only at 25%. Your Fire Madigan's not working." I go, "Hey, we're just starting." The whole goal of what we were trying to do, me and Durkin and the state party, was to let people know who he is. He had a 25% name ID. That's the number of people that actually knew him. By the time we got done, he's got about a 90% name ID. That's what we wanted to do. Not that we're going to win his seat or win majorities, even though we tried to do that. We wanted the state of Illinois to know how the state of Illinois was being run and who was running it. And it turns out, as we'd said for years, that he was doing it corruptly. I always believed it was corrupt. I'm not from Chicago. I'm from Bloomington. When I went to Springfield, I'm not from the Democratic Party. I'm like, oh my God. Mike McLean sits out in front of the speaker's office. Nobody gets back there. And that's where all the sausage is made. And whenever there was a conflict of interest that came up that was apparent, he would say that he invokes his own personal conflict of interest policy. And at the end of the day, at the end of this trial, that's what he got caught doing.
Only playing devil's advocate for the sake of the conversation.
Sure.
The Daily Way, the Chicago Way. Was Madigan so schooled in that he didn't know any better?
Certainly. And the system changed. Patronage, back in the day, it was perfectly permissible to build your army via patronage. You work for my campaign, and then I'll get you a job. And that's how it worked. And he was raised, Mayor Daley won. He worked in that administration. But that changed decades ago. 30 years ago, they got rid of that. But it was beyond just the patronage army, the thing I think that he used, the way he ran his operation, they learned in his early days. When I became party chairman, there was a very distinguished, wealthy man in the state that took me to breakfast and said, Madigan's number one goal every day of his life, he wakes up thinking about, how do I keep myself in power? So in this instance, he had to keep himself in power by giving his flunkies jobs so they would work for him on the campaigns. Well, it turned out the way he did it, in this case, it was to influence legislation. Yeah, long answer to a short question. The system changed, but Madigan didn't change. But Madigan was doing all kinds of this stuff. I think if you actually looked at every piece of legislation that touched on him, and Steve Brown and some of those guys, what went on in Springfield, all of it I thought was not ethical. And it turns out in Madigan's case, it was illegal. And if you read the sentencing memo, this wasn't a close call. There was a lot of evidence that he actually gave out these no-show jobs to his buddies. And in return, he influenced legislation, a huge piece of legislation.
Did he get sloppy? Did he think he was entitled to it? Why did he get caught?
I think he got arrogant and sloppy. So Mike McLean was his bag man, for lack of a better term, but that was his longtime buddy who used to sit out in front of his office, and he was kind of the conduit to get into Madigan. McLean used to go over to the local tavern in Springfield after he had dinner with Madigan, drink 4 glasses of wine and start shooting out texts and making all kinds of stupid comments. I remember when Bruce Rauner was governor, that's kind of how McLean operated. So McLean kind of brought him down. But I think they did get a little arrogant. They got sloppy, and I think they believed they were untouchable. Interestingly, at this sentencing hearing, I read all the filings that went to the hearing, and their position was he didn't do anything wrong all the way through, even at sentencing. And it was just, I'm like, God, these guys are so arrogant, and they think they can outsmart everybody. Mike Madigan's chief of staff is now sitting in a penitentiary because he lied in the grand jury after being immunized, thinking that he could outsmart the grand jury or outsmart the federal prosecutors. It's like, these guys are, it was arrogance and sloppiness.
The guy that replaced him, ethically sound from a distance. How do you feel about him?
I like Chris Welch. He's much more accessible. You can walk into that office. I think he's very open. I don't have any of the issues ethically that we did with Madigan. The thing is, Madigan was such a unique creature. Like Chuck Todd said, he was this power broker. So it wasn't ever about policy with him. It was all about him keeping power. And so if you're down there handing out favors or handing out jobs or affecting legislation, that's corrupt. It was so, in the sense that how things are actually supposed to operate, to go down there as an outsider and see how it actually works and see that everybody is buying off on it. I remember when I first went to the state's attorney's office up here in 1987, my dad said to me, again, from Bloomington, just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean it's right. And I think that was great advice. And that's it. Somebody should do a miniseries on it because it is truly a fascinating story.
Well, and what about the money? Because I think you and I are in different spots about this. I believe that his, largely legal, incredibly unethical mortgage, or I should say a tax refinancing law firm that he ran for years.
They do property tax appeals.
Property tax appeals firm that he ran for years. There's a lot of money there.
Yeah, he had $40 million in the bank.
So he's got some restitution to pay, I assume?
They fined him $2.5 million, which is $1 million more than the government was asking for. He keeps his $40 million minus that, but also he didn't pay for his legal fees. From what I understand, that came out of his campaign funds. So all the people that donated to him paid for his legal fees, which is another ethics reform. We could do a whole series of shows on what needs to be done there. But anyway, but it's a tax appeal.
Compare him to a guy who you and I both like personally, who is in jail, Ed Burke, he ran the city's money for years and years and years. Did Ed make the same mistakes?
No, and the only reason Alderman Burke's in jail is because Mike Madigan was under investigation. I thought of all the cases that we've read, that the one against Alderman Burke was the thinnest. What they do is, or what Madigan did, is they get these clients, their big buildings downtown, right? They get property tax assessments. The assessor assesses it high. They go in and get it lowered. Back in the old days, they would take a percentage. I think they've changed that now. But it was always this incestuous relationship between, in this case, Danny Solis and in the city council and the people that regulate construction in the city. But the reality is, Tribune did a big article on this about 15 years ago. But the people that ended up getting hurt in this weren't the building owners. It's the people in Ford Heights and these poor areas. Yep. There's a pot of money that the county needs, right, in property tax. That pot, if you make the building owners pay less of that pot, you know where it's coming from? It's coming from the poor people. But then that was another thing with Madigan. This notion of him being for the little guy was, when he had great defense attorneys, but I'm watching him and going, and you do entertainment, you do what you do. You cannot create a false story that's believable that this is the protector of the little guy. You're like, no, he's not. You kidding me? He's a protector of himself. But that's what they were trying to spin in the sentencing hearing. And that's where the theater and the drama came in for me. I'm like, this just does not work. He's sitting there in his big red tie, and everybody knows what he's all about. It's not about the little guy. It's about him. He's the only little guy it's about. But anyway, that practice, I didn't have any problem with the practice other than, what Madigan did. There were conflicts, I think, with issues that came up in Springfield over the years. You could explore in more detail with a guy like Durkin, where Madigan probably had a conflict with clients but made decisions, political decisions, legislative decisions, when he had clients that probably he should have been conflicted.
So Governor J.B. Pritzker funded Democrats heavily before he won the governor's mansion. Is he going to have to pay any sort of symbolic toll for his association? Or as a big donor, is that not going to matter? And of course, I'm speaking, is it, down the road if he decides to run for president. It's not going to be real popular to be a white billionaire anyway.
I don't think that. I think Madigan's, and that's another part of going to the sentencing here. It's kind of yesterday's news. Everybody knew he's convicted and going away, and I think he's so far removed, and I don't think he'll pay much price for that. I don't think people are going to understand it well enough to have it hurt Governor Pritzker.
Pritzker is in all likelihood going to run for president. I would predict that the guy that I'm fond of, who I think was a great mayor in Chicago, but as I told him many times, if you weren't such a prick, you would have been a lot farther along in your career. Rahm Emanuel, because, he hasn't really done much. I think Rahm is going to run.
Yeah.
If
talking about it yesterday.
Rahm and Pritzker both run, is there room for both of them?
Probably not, but here's my theory on that for what it's worth. I know that, and I agree with you, I thought he was a great mayor. And I saw him speak a couple of weeks ago at an event here, and man, he was good. It was funny. He was self-deprecating, and his resume is second to none. But I think that he made those statements yesterday as a way to smoke Governor Pritzker out. You got to make a decision here. Are you running for governor again, or are you running for president? I think Rahm, and I don't know this from any insider information or speaking to him, but I think he's just trying to smoke Pritzker out and get him to make a decision. Because I think Rahm would like to run for governor. And I tell you what,
Rahm would run for president. He wouldn't run for governor.
No, if Pritzker runs for president, Pritzker runs for president and doesn't run for governor, then Rahm runs for governor.
You think so?
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
I don't think they vote.
That's interesting. I did not think that he would run for governor. Nonetheless, the city.
You know what? He would be. That's the only thing he doesn't have on his resume.
That's exactly
his
right.
Resume is second to none.
Yeah, that's exactly right. For those that don't know, he was a powerful member of the House of Representatives. He was chief of staff. He was a 2 or 3 term mayor. I guess 2-term.
2-term. But you forget too, when he was in Congress, he organized probably the best year for Democrats. He got Speaker Pelosi'd, and you can never. I know we used to ridicule him he was like the one thing you put up for Republicans because they all hated Rahm Emanuel. I guess funny, our good friend Rick Pearson, I was down at Billy Goat having beers with him last year.
What? You too at Billy Goat?
Billy Goat. I love the goat. So we're talking. He goes, "Hey, I got to do an interview with Rahm over in Japan." So it's like 9 o'clock, so like 9 in the morning there, whatever it was. He goes, "What should I ask him?" And I go, "You know what I would ask him? Mayor, did you ever think there'd be a day people be walking around the city of Chicago saying, 'I miss Rahm'?"
The Democratic Party is so messed up and so confused and so unable to get out of their own way. Again, our friend Eric Edelstein famously voted as one of the most powerful Democrats in the country through his consultancy, said it best when he said live, it's a circular firing squad. As soon as we get power, we get in a circle and start shooting at each other. But the Democrats need Rahm Emanuel much more than Rahm Emanuel needs to run for president.
Yeah, and he is the only, this is probably what he knows better than everybody, it could be his problem down the road, has the party moved too far away from him. Now, if you remember, because we're old enough to remember in the 70s when Richard Nixon won 48 states twice or something like that, the Democrats, other than Jimmy Carter, and after Jimmy Carter especially, were really in the wilderness, and it was Bill Clinton that stepped up and formed that centrist governor's leadership, DLCC or whatever it was, and said, hey, guys, we can't be the crazy far-left loony party. We need to get back to talking about issues that people care about. And that's exactly what Mayor Emanuel is saying. And he says it very well. The Democrats have huge problems with their base, which is way out of touch with, I think, what most Americans want. And Donald Trump did better in Illinois by 450,000 votes in the last election cycle. Then the Republicans say, oh, he did better, blah, blah, blah. He didn't really do better. Democrats just didn't show up because, I mean, literally in the burbs, the turnout in the burbs was down 50%. Point is, people, the old-time Democrats, the daily Democrats, the more conservative Democrats, just don't go along with the far-left agenda and putting AOC and Bernie Sanders out there. That's not good. And Rahm says it best, I don't want to talk about bathrooms anymore.
We not only do not want to talk about bathrooms, you also don't want to have Bernie Sanders out screaming his lungs out, talking about the horrible billionaires that are ruining the country when he is sitting at probably a net worth north of 10 million with multiple homes. You begin to lose your credibility. And while the kids may like to hear Bernie yell about free college tuition and various other things, this country needs a dose of reality. And the Democrats need to understand they're already behind the 8 ball. And if they don't get behind one person, or at least a couple people, 3 people. Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, is an impressive guy. There's impressive Democrats that are out there a lot of them in governor's mansions. And if the Democrats don't get off their asses and figure it out, I don't know what happens next. It's not going to be Trump. No, he's not going to get a third term. But this infestation of lunacy, we don't know what the country's, let alone 30 months from now, we don't know what the country's going to be like in 3 months.
Yeah, and, I would never underestimate Governor Pritzker, too, if he gets in it. I remember when he first started running against Bruce Rauner, it might have been on your show, maybe it was Pearson's on GN. I called up the Rauner campaign people. I go, man, this guy's pretty good. This is when it was still in the primary. And he has effectively gotten everything done he wanted to get done policy-wise to 13 or 14 points, which is right in line with the left side of the Democratic Party, which is where the primaries are won. And, you always have to run a little bit to your left or right in the primaries. I wouldn't dismiss his chances, given that he's got all the money in the world. And he's actually a very good campaigner, and he's a smart guy.
And he's a decent guy. And
he's a very likable guy.
Yeah, he's a likable guy.
I think he's a very likable guy. And I did that press conference in front of his house with the broken toilets.
Right, making fun of the fact that he had played a toilet game. A political toilet game, because that sounded weird. Let me bring it back to the city for a second before we get to Orange Julius Caesar. On Memorial Day this year, as I had done in many previous years, I had the honor of emceeing the Memorial Day ceremonies for the city. And Mayor Johnson was there along with Tony Preckwinkle. Neither one of them big fans of me, hard to believe. But Mayor Johnson made an effort to be nice. Tony Preckwinkle threw up in her mouth a little bit when she had to say hello to me. But Mayor Johnson's approval rate is at 6%. I believe carjacking is at 7.5%.
Well, do it if you're doing within the margin of error. It could actually be 2%.
But the thing that is strange, because you mentioned turnout, right? But Paul Vallis may have been a great mayor, may have been an average mayor, may have been a bad mayor, but he never would have been this guy. And Paul Vallis lost because 23% of the people in Chicago voted. Chicagoans, Illinoisans, this goes to New York, it goes to California. Wherever there is an overwhelming lopside of one party over the other, you got to show up and vote. You got to vote because somebody's going to be representing you. And we watched 92 million people not vote for president, and we watched 22% actually show up to vote for mayor. So what's it going to be for the city of Chicago? It's one of the most important cities in the world. Is there a Hispanic candidate out there that stands out?
I think you and I are the only ones that aren't running for mayor.
Yeah, the list is getting longer.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of people running for mayor. Now, that being said, I was talking to a very smart Democratic political strategist last week. That makes it a bigger chance that Brandon Johnson actually gets through the runoff. If, you got to get 50+1 in February to get on. That's a scenario that I can see happening. And if he gets to a runoff, he's got a chance. I don't think that's going to happen, but it could.
But people have to care enough to get off their asses and go vote.
Yeah. Preckwinkle's going to have a challenge too. So there should be a lot of interest. But I agree. The turnout was ridiculous. I think part of the problem is here, though, there's too much politics. Back in the old days, right, there was a break.
Yeah.
In the summer, you'd get off. You really still would start Labor Day. Now it's like, I just had a 2-hour campaign meeting this morning on something.
Yeah, it's 24/7 all the time.
All the time. And all the time news. And now there's all this micro news. So I think there's a little fatigue because people are just kind of sick of hearing about it. But that being said, you got to vote, especially, the teachers union got Brandon Johnson in. He's a shill for the teachers union. He's the worst elected official I've ever seen anywhere.
I totally agree.
He's absolutely horrible, incompetent. And I'm not a fan of Preckwinkle, but she's much more competent.
Well, we've got a situation in Chicago, which is repeated in big cities and other places. The notion of crime in Chicago is appropriate for a city this size. It is not the Old West. And there are cities like St. Louis and D.C. and other places that have statistically much worse situations crime-wise. Having said that, you've got teenagers doing takeovers of blocks and streets, not far from where you live in the city. You've seen it happen.
I watch it, yeah.
All the time. And instead of having a mayor stand up, as Rahm did in the past, saying if you commit a crime, you're going to be held accountable, the mayor and the far left contingent in Chicago is standing up and saying, you won't label kids like that. And the reason they're acting out like this is they don't have anything to do. A crime is a crime.
Go crack open a fire hydrant. That's what everybody. He's going to get killed, I think, today or tomorrow on this curfew thing, too.
Yeah, because the city wants a curfew. The majority want a curfew of 7 p.m. whenever it's needed?
Yeah, and he doesn't want it. It's where you're talking about. It's right down by Navy Pier. You can't walk by there. But he doesn't. Listen, these are the same people Brandon and Tony Preckwinkle that thought Kim Foxx was a good idea.
Yeah, ridiculous.
And that not enforcing the law is a good idea. You know what? We've got a really, really good state's attorney in there now who's not political at all, has no political ambitions, and she's doing a great job. Why? Because she's enforcing the law. She's getting along with police. Not everything's about race. Sometimes it's about there are bad people that need to go to the penitentiary, and we need to protect our victims. But Johnson and the CTU crew and Tony, they don't get it. They think, you know what, we're slowly going to get rid of them. But it's just mind-boggling to me that they think not enforcing the laws and treating everybody as a victim, even when they're not victims, they're actually some bad kids. It just doesn't work.
Let's lighten the load for just a second and talk about World War III. I wish that we were wrong. You and I've talked about this many times. But when we talked about Trump's insane cabinet picks and the danger that each of them represented for the importance of the departments that they led, it's all coming true. Every bit of it. And now we're on the verge of literally a war in the Middle East that we are on the verge of being a part of. We might well be a part of it now. We've got an angry, dry drunk running the Defense Department. And it all starts, of course, with the core value that Trump's not running the country, kids. Wake up to that fact. Trump gets up every morning to figure out how he could be the headline and also what's going to serve him well and what gold phone he could sell or other ways that he could make money. That's it. So the danger is the Project 2025 people around him who are actually making decisions. Because again and again, it's proved the last one in the room is the one that has the most impact on him. The last thing you heard on Fox is the one that has the most impact. It's an incredibly dangerous time. World War III, we're on the verge. And yet it's a beautiful day in Chicago where you and I are. And people are walking around like nothing's happening.
Yeah. The Middle East mess, and particularly in Iran, is the product of about 40 years of bad policy.
And here's the thing. They can't nuke up. We need to stop them from nuking up. But you're not doing it by going in and blowing up their hospitals and doing all the things that Netanyahu's doing to stay out of jail in Israel.
Yeah, I listen, you know how I feel about Trump. I am of the mind, though, that they need to do that bunker buster bomb and blow that facility up and get the nukes away from the Iranians. I've always believed, and 7 or 8 years ago, that the Iranian people are smart people. I think they're sick of the theocracy and all the garbage, and they might welcome regime change. That being said, that's a very complicated issue, and it's very difficult once that guy's gone because God knows what's coming in.
Yeah, well, look what happened in Iraq, and that was not even close to the circumstances here.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just think that we got to quit screwing around with them and either take them out or get to the negotiating table deal. They have to be told that they cannot have nuclear weapons, and that's it.
The personal agendas.
The Obama cut I didn't like.
Yeah, the personal agendas of the people in charge now is the most dangerous part of this story. And what can you do about it as an individual? All you can do is bitch to your legislators and get involved and show up. So if all of the cabinet positions are ill-informed and ill-advised, and we don't even have time to talk about Kennedy and the decisions he's made on the health side of things, this frustration people have turns into not showing up. Well, not showing up means nothing changes. A Facebook post isn't change. You have to show up. You have to do something about it.
Yeah, nor is a protest.
No.
This is where Democrats are. What are you doing? If you're not down there, you could register 1 million people.
Right, right.
Get them out to vote.
Right.
But blocking the loop and taking me an hour to get into town so you can feel good about it, that's not effective.
You stop my day, you're pretty much guaranteed I'm not going to see your view. That's it.
Yeah. Although a lot of it I support, they should have been there with a thing registering voters, you get 75,000 voters sign up, make sure but they don't think that way. They'd rather have the 1 day hit piece. It equally stupid was what Trump did with that parade, which ended up kind of
just an embarrassment. Just an embarrassment and a total waste of money. So again, you know where I'm going with this. The malpractice being committed right now by the Senate in particular, the Republican Senate, is the most outrageous thing I've seen in my lifetime in politics. The idea that
better than the House.
The idea that, well, the House is a lost cause, but the idea that they won't stand up to Trump and they won't stand up and say that's wrong, the president shouldn't say that, whatever the case may be. The idea that Lisa Murkowski said, sure, we're all afraid of him, and she said it out loud, then go home. Go home to Alaska. So the state of the Republican...
She's usually been part of the resistance.
Yeah, so the state of the Republican Party in D.C. is tragic and embarrassing and dangerous, and nobody seems to be taking charge. John Thune, I had some hope for John Thune, the new Senate leader. He's a pussy. He's a complete rollover. So who's going to step up for Republicans? Is there anybody in the Republican Senate you see that could be a leader?
Yeah, I think it probably goes back before Thune, though. I think the big mistake they made twice, the two big mistakes, the one is they had the opportunity to impeach Trump and put in the impeachment articles, you can never serve in public office again. That they had the votes to do it.
Thank you, Mitch McConnell, for backing
up.
Mitch
McConnell said, no, we'll let the justice system take care of it. Well, the Justice Department never picked up the ball because Biden's such a sissy. He was afraid to go after a former president, and they didn't do anything for a year and a half. That's why Trump never went to trial on any of these cases. I guarantee he would have been convicted on both those cases. I read that they were good. So I think it goes back further than that, but there is a weird obsession, fear with Trump. But I do believe that it's over in about 14 months. Because if we have a real bad midterm, which it looks like we could, I think that allegiance to him is going to be gone. And I don't think there are a lot of people that are going to be running up Capitol Hill with J.D. Vance flags. I don't think that cultish worship is going to be transferred. But to me, I completely agree with what you're saying. But I kind of like put my head down. We just got to get through the next 14 months, and then the nightmare is over because he's a lame duck. A year from November.
You have helped candidates from both parties come forward and run, and you've encouraged those who you see from a lifetime of politics that maybe have a political future. What do you say to somebody who thinks I want to get involved, but then looks at the mess in D.C. and goes, I can't get anything done in that scenario? I mean, a guy like Dick Durbin, and you can say what you want about Dick Durbin, and Dick Durbin certainly was the home team guy for the Democrats when he needed to be. But I don't know anybody that worked more across the aisle like Durbin when it mattered. And I think Senator Durbin stepping down makes total sense with his age or health or whatever is going on with him. But I guarantee you part of the reason he's getting out because he knows he can't get anything done anymore.
Yeah, Dick Durbin's been a great senator from Illinois. And I'm still a Republican. He's a Democrat, but I just think he's done.
So how do you get a 20-something or a 30-something to go, yeah, I want to do this?
Well, at that age, they generally are going to do. In fact, I met with a guy yesterday. I go, here's the reality of it. Not the toxicity of the place, but this is how you get elected. And they don't really want to listen to you anyway. But I don't know what to tell people. There are people who are still interested in doing it. I'm working on a couple campaigns now. But if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So I encourage them to engage and do better. The thing that there are so many reforms that need to be made, but the one thing I think that people don't necessarily understand that aren't really in this business, the evilness comes from the consultants, the political consultants that put these campaigns together and teach people this is how you run campaigns and this is how you govern. And they make money on everything. They make money on commercials. They make money on mail. So when you think that these political consultants are actually helping, they're just trying to make money. Point is, Trump has raised a whole generation of consultants and the Democrats to a lesser extent, but still to an extent, that think that this is the way that government should operate. It's scorched earth, zero-sum game, and this is how we're going to do it. But people still want to do it, and I encourage them to do it. I encourage my kids to do it.
Right.
If you're not, we can't give up.
Well, I think about your son in particular. I think your son would be a great politician if he chose that path.
Yeah, I think the girls would too.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. We have a friend through your daughter, Maeve, who was an amazing young lady named Halia. And Halia came here to learn social work because in Ukraine, her country, there wasn't a lot of social workers. And she particularly wanted to focus on kids. She went back home a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now, and is trying to stay alive and trying to have her family stay alive. But in the meantime, at the ripe old age of, I think, 25, maybe 26, she's trying to get kids who were stolen by Russians and put into orphanages out and taken back home to their families. It's a nightmare what's gone on over there, and what we tend to look the other way on, or what we're arguing about whether or not we should be spending money on. And I think about Holly every week. God bless her. I mean, and you had her in your home many times.
Yeah, Maeve, my daughter, keeps in touch with her still, but I will never understand the Republicans' reluctance on this and Trump's reluctance. I thought the war was supposed to be over in a day, though.
Yeah, he was going to get it fixed the first day, yeah.
And Nikki Haley said it best, the whole world's watching to see what we do here because the Chinese want to jump into Taiwan or whatever people want to do, take aggressive moves. But it's a tragedy. And I was talking to some people that I think know what they're talking about that said if we actually committed the resources that they need, they could push the Russians back and get this thing back to where it was. But it's horrible. They're kidnapping babies.
Yep.
Russians are bad people.
Yeah.
Their leader, they're horrible. Reagan was right. It's an evil empire. And Putin was the head of the KGB. Couldn't get any more evil than that.
Right. He doesn't care about lives. He doesn't care about people. He doesn't care about
Trump,
children.
for some reason, is fixated on hanging out with these dictators. He thinks that that's cool. And Putin completely manipulated him.
Well, it's all a TV show. It's all a TV show to Donald Trump. The whole thing is a TV show, whether he's watching it or whether he's the lead character in it. And being this pseudo tough guy is the same.
Draft dodger.
Yeah, is the same thing he's trying to do with filling the hole in his character that he's had his entire life. He's not well. And when you've got a whole group of leaders that aren't well in the most powerful positions, it's a dangerous place to be. So I guess I'd wrap it up.
Guardrails are definitely off. A lot of this stuff wouldn't have happened, 7 years ago. But you're right. No one's telling them no. Because some of the idiocy, I'm like, oh my God, somebody didn't tell you in a meeting this is a dumb idea.
We played a clip in the beginning of some of the things Trump has said at the age of 79 now, and how clueless he is, and the things he gets caught up in, including leaving the G7 summit so he could apparently come back and put up flagpoles in the White House lawn and talk about how he paid for them. It's outrageous and it's frightening, and it's more than your crazy old grandfather, your crazy old uncle shooting his mouth off because he is the president of the United States. How do you stop this burn? Democrats, get off your asses. Stop feeling sorry for yourselves. Stop having 15 messages when you need one or two. And Republicans, take charge of your own party. Get back to being the party of the Lincoln, party of Lincoln before it's too late. Because what do we know? Rome, Great Britain, Asia, China, all great empires die. And they all die by suicide. And we, before our 250th birthday next year, may be on life support. So you got to be involved. You got to get pissed off like you are and I am. I think you're more of a realist than I am about being able to survive this probably, but I don't think you can sit back and wait.
Yeah, you got to engage, you got to vote. But the Democrats got to get their act together. They're horrible. I mean, Kamala Harris lost because Trump didn't win either time. They put up two horrible candidates. And you've talked to Democrats that have been around a while that have actually won races. They say the same thing. They're so disgusted with the Democratic Party. So I remember our good friend Joe Donnell, I got a huge argument with him before the last election. I go, Joe, this is the Democrats' fault for the situation we're in now. Trump is what he is. You guys are putting up no alternative.
Yeah, I mean, if you have an abusive parent, in this case, Donald Trump, and the mom is the Democrat in this scenario, well, mom doesn't get a free pass if she stays in the house. You got to be able to take care of the kids. We're the kids. You got to be able to take care of the people you're supposed to be representing.
That's why I think whatever Rahm does, his message and the reason that Trump won over those blue collar, and I hate that term, voters from the Democrats is they actually believe that he is fighting for them, right? Whether the rest of the stuff they're willing to ignore because they believe Trump's in their corner. And I think Rahm can have that same appeal on a more intellectually sound level. Say, hey, we're going to stick up for you. And it's not class warfare, but there's certain things that middle income people deserve or a way to be treated that I think Rahm can represent that better than a 4-time bankrupt billionaire who's made $1 billion a month every year he's been in office since he's been president, which there are 50 things that should be investigated. And I'll just close with this. If I were the Democrats, I'd quit trying to go after Trump. I'd go after Pam Bondi.
Yeah.
Nonsense at the judge. Go after the lesser that don't have the cultish followings and get some victories against them. Pam Bondi should never be attorney general. You could take out
half of his cabinet for improper activities and dangerous activities, starting with her.
If they get the majority back and they can actually conduct these investigations, do it strategically, though. But she would be number one. She's not sympathetic. And some of the stuff she's done, she should never be in that spot. It's horrific. And then Kristi Noem's next.
Yep, 100%. Just to reiterate what we said earlier, thank you, Senator Durbin, for your service to the Illinois and to the country. Wish you good health in the years ahead. Pat, you're the best. I appreciate it. And at some point...
Let's get out and play, buddy.
Okay. Apparently your phone's not working. I'm here.
That's a rotary phone, buddy. You got one of these flat things now. You hold it like this. You don't hold it like that.
All right, man. Enjoy your day. Say hi to the kids.
Steve.
See ya.
Good to see you.
Thanks, bud.
Take care.
Okay, bye. Oh, don't hang up. Thank you, Pat Brady. That was educational. I learned something. And I hope everybody enjoys hearing from Pat again. It's been a while. In the meantime, I thank you for listening. And I thank Ross Cochran, who, by the way, is featured on our most recent Anything But Politics episode. If you want to get a gander at my son Ross, the executive producer, and enjoy yourself. You can hear he and I talk in a very personal father and son way. And he says it went well enough that I'm still in the will. So I got that going for me. I'm glad you're here. I thank you for being here. Don't forget, we're off next week, but Dave Barry will be posted in case you missed it the first time around, and catch up on all of our Live from My Office podcasts at CochranShow.com, along with everything else that's going on. Oh, I almost forgot Substack. Substack, along with all the social media, you can go to Substack and read what I'm thinking as well. I call that feature Live from My Keyboard. Just search Steve Cochran on Substack. All right, enough of me. Let's talk about you. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening or whatever time it is where you are. And thank you for being here. I'm Live from My Office.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event, and occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to CochranShow.com for more.
Apt is your number one destination for the home, and they're bringing gourmet cooking demonstrations for cooking outdoors with grilling demos. Here's the deal. You join Apt for firing up a different grill every weekend through the end of July. You can meet experts from top brands like Weber and Lynx and Napoleon, Coyote, and more. Enjoy barbecue samples, get grilling tips, and learn how to select the perfect grill. I've got a Weber grill that I got from Apt in my backyard right now. Shouldn't you as well? Hey, check out Apt Electronics on Instagram and Facebook to learn more about the event and for free in-home delivery, for professional installation, for complete satisfaction, for tasty chops, burgers, dogs, and perfect ribs. Shop at Apt. You know what they've been doing? I don't know if you've heard. I mean, it's out there, but not everybody knows. They've been pleasing people since 1936.